Hi, I'm Charlie Collins, and we're talking sport. And you're very welcome to Talking Sport. This week in studio with me are Martin McHugh and Chris McNulty. No need to tell you who they are or what they do, both well known in sporting circles here in the Northwest. We have loads of stuff to talk about. We're going to finish off today looking forward to the Ulster Club Championship final. It's good to see a Donegal team back in it again. Glenswilly against Ballinderry, of course, on Sunday week. But we're going to start with soccer. And the Republic of Ireland, of course, appointed a new management team in recent times, Martin O'Neill and Roy Keane. And they got things underway with two recent friendlies against Latvia and Poland. A victory over Latvia and a scoreless draw out in Poland. Not much learned, one would have to say. Chris McNulty, who's a die-hard Republic of Ireland fan and has travelled to all parts of the world to follow them. I suppose the big thing is the appointment's been made. The two friendlies weren't going to mean very much. Everybody turned up that you'd expect to turn up to make an impression. Two poor enough games, Chris. But going forward now, it's all about qualification. And what's the general feeling now that we've had time to settle in with the thought of O'Neill and Roy Keane?
Well, I suppose the initial circus is over, and that's probably not a bad thing, Charlie, that they've got that whole thing gone for two friendlies rather than have that whole sort of hoo-ha about Martin O'Neill and particularly Roy Keane coming up to a competitive match that actually means something.
Yeah.
You mentioned the squad there, like the squad was picked by Noel King, so the two boys had very little input into the squad other than 4 days before Latvia. As regards the two games, you know, they mean very little because these players are under so much pressure at clubs and they're not really exerting themselves to their full capabilities. You know, you look at the likes of Seamus Coleman coming back this week to play a Merseyside derby this weekend, their priorities obviously with their clubs, but I suppose Martin and Roy would have learned quite a bit maybe about the character of certain players. You know, they'd be looking at the makeup of certain players, but I suppose more so they'd be maybe getting involved with how the FAI are running things and, you know, how all that, the logistics of international management is, and maybe sort of just putting the foundation blocks in place going forward because, you know, they have till next September to get a squad together that hopefully will qualify us for France 2016, because that's ultimately is what their remit is. Bottom line is qualify for France or gone.
Or gone,
you know, and that's the reality of it.
Martin, you've managed teams. I know you're a bit of a fan of Roy Keane's when he was over in Sunderland and all that sort of stuff. I mean, there was a huge surprise when he was named number 2, but I suppose what struck me about the whole build-up and the circus that Chris was talking about there was there was far more interest in Roy Keane than there was in Martin O'Neill. Now, maybe O'Neill was happy for that, take the pressure off him a little bit. But is that going to work going forward? Is Roy Keane going to be a successful number 2 and allow Martin O'Neill to be a successful number 1?
Well, there's a couple of things involved in it. As you have said, you know, there's more to. I never seen a situation where the number 2 is. There's more word about the number 2, and everybody wants to hear what the number 2 is to say, not the number 1. You know. But suppose from his point of view, he needs to get back into management, and this is a way for him to get back into club management, and he needed this. So fair play to Martin O'Neill. You know, it's interesting. I heard a fellow on radio one time from Sligo, a very successful business person in America, who's on a lot of the big boards out there. And somebody asked him, well, why, how come you're so successful, or what would you put it down to? And he says, I wasn't afraid to employ people that were better than myself, because if they ended up being my boss, that meant I made a right call. So Martin O'Neill, in fairness to him, he's looking at it the same way, a very intelligent man. He's thinking from that point of view. He's not afraid to do that. And what you said, he's taking a lot of the pressure off himself by doing this here, because the pressure is going to be more on Keane than himself. The other thing is, I suppose Keane has been the greatest player we've ever seen in this country, playing football in this country. So a lot of the players look up to him, and maybe the whole pressure's off him of not being a number 1 and not having that pressure of being a manager and dealing with situations that he's no good at dealing with. So he probably is, if we analyse the whole thing, number 2 is probably the right place for him, provided the number 1 is able to deal with that situation. And I think this will happen, because you take the likes of the younger players there in the Irish squad. I mean, they want to come here now. They want to play for Ireland. The other thing, and the biggest thing here, unless we'd even go back to Jack Charlton's time, only for we had the granddad's rule or the grandma's rule or that rule there, we would never have succeeded to achieve what we achieved. Now there's a chance again that we can do that, because these players, these two lads are very well got, and we can pick up players that, you know, England don't want all the footballers they have. Other countries and we can pick up these type of players. So I think going forward is good, but I think the whole hype over the whole thing and about couple of challenge games, I mean the whole thing, there's a media circus out there at the minute. I know there's so much people involved in the media and we need that there and everything else, but it's gone crazy. The whole thing has gone mad. You know what I mean? It's crazy. I mean, we go back to even, the time out in Poland and us 4-0 down and the Irish supporters cheering and everything else. That kind of stuff, it's just where we've gone as a nation. It was great and everything else, but we have got to keep, I've always remembered the theory on handball to me was what really, I couldn't believe what was going on in this country. We're lucky that the French embassy in Dublin wasn't burnt at the time with the whole hype about a load of nonsense about nothing. I mean, and they end up, and that's the way it is. So I just think that, look, and maybe, after this whole thing's over now, maybe the whole thing will settle down. Let them get at it. They have a lot of time to go out there, look at football, study at players is there. And the funny thing about it is America is another place probably they'll be looking at for players as well. There's different places to look at. So look, from my point of view, I've always looked up to Keane as a footballer. I thought he was the best footballer ever I saw playing. And I went to watch him one day against Spain, and I was just saying to somebody, the difference in him and other players in the field was when he was getting the ball, he was looking up. When other players were getting the ball, they stopped the ball and give it. And that was just what I thought about him as a player. And you could take that to any sport.
Absolutely. What about Ireland, rugby, Martin? We got some belting last week against Australia, and now we have the task of taking on the All Blacks, who are unbeaten this year. I was just saying I think it was Chris when I was talking to him yesterday, the reality is that the big players that we've had for 10 years are just kind of past their best. O'Driscoll, Darcy, Brian O'Connell, Paul O'Connell's had a lot of injuries and that sort of stuff. We're in a big transition period, and we don't seem to be able to make that jump from what we had to win the Grand Slam to what we need to move forward.
Yeah, so, I think again sometimes we thought at a stage we were going to win the World Cup. We get carried away in this country, and then when there's a letdown, it's a massive letdown, and we go down with a bang because we got to keep ourselves level-headed and be a bit of sense about sport in general. And what happens it's the biggest problem managers have. It's trying to keep the whole thing on a level keel, especially supporters on a level keel. That we do get carried away, and then when it goes wrong, so the rugby's no different either. Listen, we're a very small nation. There's a very, very small pool of players there to pick from. People would say, most of the rugby people say, if there were no Gaelic or hurling in Ireland, they would have a very good rugby team, which is fair enough. And then the Gaelic people say, if we hadn't had soccer in Ireland, we would have a better team. And then soccer people say, if they were picking from the whole, so we'd have better players and better international. That's understandable. We're small. We keep. There's a lot of sports going. Like a lot of other countries don't have, say, Gaelic football and especially in small and hurling and small, especially only 4.5 million people in Ireland. So we have to deal with that there and forward. But we have to keep our feet in the ground. Look, they've been great ambassadors, great leaders, and what they've achieved. As much with Ireland as what they've achieved, we'll say, with Munster and Leinster, has been unbelievable for them. And when we look back, and it's been great. Listen, they're going to that stage, and it's getting tougher to get these other players coming up. And the likes of New Zealand and these big rugby nations, Australia. I mean, they're going to be tough. I mean, it's going to be very hard on them. But maybe they'll do better actually this weekend because the pressure's off them. Yeah, people were expecting them to beat Australia. I mean, there was no logic to it. They were expecting to beat them, but that's the way we are as a nation. We go. So look at rugby. I mean, it's a great sport. The one thing I think Gaelic football's gone to a stage where it's getting nearly dangerous with the tackles, with what they're doing in gyms and that there, and the amount of big hits that's going on. I think that's getting dangerous. Rugby's definitely dangerous. I don't know, looking at rugby going forward, would you want your children playing rugby or not? I'm not 100% sure of it now. Maybe rugby people will tell you different, that they're all mainly that, but some of the hits that's in rugby, it's like two rams meeting out in the field or two bulls meeting out in the field. It's just the hits, the massive hits, and it's great, but the person receiving it, I mean, we're looking at even your injuries that you get out of football and later on in life, and the injuries that you get out of Gaelic football or soccer, and what injuries are they going to be picking up on later on in life out of rugby? But look, at fair play to them, and suppose the plus with them, the fact it's professional now does help. But looking forward to the game, I'm looking forward to the game. You're looking forward to watch New Zealand. What a nation! They're always that step ahead of everybody else. People are saying they were the first team to start doing the big weights program and take in that there. Yeah. Now they reckon they've moved on now to the smaller player. They've moved on now to kind of a different type of player. They're always just 5 or 6 years ahead of everybody else. So you got to study them, and you will see everybody else will follow suit. But they're always right. Rugby's their sport. That's their big sport. It's the national sport in New Zealand, and that's what they play, and they're very proud of it. Yeah. Look, it's great to have them in Dublin. Yeah.
Listen, we're going to move on. Sport right the way through all 12 months of the year is something that we've had to deal with here in Ireland and here in the county particularly, and it's been a bone of contention. The Ulster Senior League, Chris, I'll just stay with you, had a meeting on Wednesday night. There was talk that they were going to switch back to winter football again. Some clubs said if they do that, they're going to pull the pin on it. There's only 9 clubs in it, so if that happened, it would be a disaster. There's a photograph on the back page of your own paper, the Donegal News, of the executive sitting up, and they look like 7 men lined up for a firing squad. and people are pointing the finger at them and saying that they're not helping the situation, they're not listening to what's going on. There's a deferral now, but it would appear as if it's going to stay not exactly the way it was, but close enough. Is that going to solve the ongoing problem?
I suppose I'll answer that in a bit of a roundabout way. Soccer in Donegal, Charlie, is on its knees, and that sounds harsh. And people say, "Look, there he is. There he's given out again. He's been very negative." But seriously,
it's the reality.
Soccer in Donegal is on its knees. Like, again, we're a small-ish county population-wise. We've got the Inishowen League, the Inishowen Youth League, the Donegal League, the Donegal Youth League, and the Ulster Senior League. Not to mention what we have then in terms of, ladies football and all that.
Yeah.
But, to stick with adult men's football here, how many organisations and how many people do we need to run one sport? Like, it's absolutely amazing. You go to Dublin, and they've got the AUL and they've got the Leinster Senior League. 2 committees.
That's it.
But we need 5 or 6 here in Donegal. And what's happening is nobody's actually running anything. And you've got 5 or 6 leagues that are just trundling along and they're doing okay and they're getting their teams, but nobody is actually doing well. And it was mentioned there on Wednesday night that, since Fanad United in 95, no one has managed to be in an intermediate cup final. And Donegal, our Oscar trainer teams, the representative teams, don't generally do well. The Ulster Senior League now bucked that trend this year, and fair
for
play
the first time in a long time.
For the first time since, I think it was Danny McConnell's team around about maybe 2000. But the problems in Donegal soccer are much deeper rooted than whether we play in January or play in June. There is a serious problem with the organisation, and it's, we say it, and I suppose it is easy to say it here. It's high time that every soccer administrator in Donegal that is running a league gets into a room and sorts the mess out. Because, you even look then at senior level, Finn Harps. If Donegal soccer was running right, Finn Harps would be at the top of the pyramid, and it would be, everybody would be sort of helping to get, because they're senior and you go down there. But the problem is, Charlie, everyone is looking after their own wee patch and don't care about anybody else.
Funny, I said in my column this week in reference to a quote that Tom Boner of Drumkeen had said that, we have to do what's best for the league. And I was, maybe a bit sarcastic in saying, well, that doesn't happen too often that people go in. You've seen this in the GAA as well, Martin. I mean, and we're talking about the seasons, and we're actually saying before we started recording here, we have the McKenna Cup starting now in January, and we have the Ulster Club Championship final now in December, and we have a 12-month season, which it doesn't make any sense. Not everybody's playing that, but better players are being caught up in that situation.
Yeah, and the biggest problem is that, say, in the good weeks, we had one of the best summers we ever had, but we had no club football played. And any county, it's not just Donegal, especially these 5 or 6 big counties, that's what's happening. There's no club football being played. So what's fellas doing is like Dublin Championship this year, the fellas headed off, most of the good club players headed off to America for the summer and came back then and played. We're still back in time to play in the club championship here. So the whole thing, it's no more than what Chris saying here. I think the clubs have to stand up, as far as I'm concerned, in the GAA. They have to start being counted in the GAA, the clubs, and they're happy enough to accept everything, it seems, at the minute, and they're happy.
Yeah.
And I mean, Croke Park's about it is money. As long as they're making big money, and that back door coming in has created a lot more money for them. It's happy to have it, but the back door has destroyed club football. And I mean, the back door came in to help. Everybody's telling me the back door came in to help the weaker counties. It's helping the stronger counties.
Yeah, of course.
It's just making them that they're all going to be in the last 8, the whole lot of them. So that's the way it is. So I think no more so than what Chris saying about soccer. The same thing with the Gaelic. People have to sit down and make a decision. You can't have, you have certain players playing the whole year round and that kind of thing. And the burnout of I think, I'm just taking my own boy Ryan now, the Minder's an example. I think they were adding it up there one day. One of the coaches involved with him, I think it's 22 hours a week. And he's his college as well that he's putting into at the minute, at this time of year.
Crazy.
22 hours a week he's putting into sport, from travelling, training, and involved. He's involved in the Sigerson team in Sligo. He's involved. He's the club under 21 team up to club under 21 thing up to a week
last week. Yeah.
And he had. I'm just taking him. I'm not setting my own way. I'm just taking him as an example that just happened now. And he has a county senior training, and he's involved with probably the county under 21s would like to have him if they could have him. So I just think that's the way it is. We're burning out in Gaelic, them players from about the age of 18 to 21, 22. That's when the burnout comes. And then the club player after that, we're not giving them enough. They're not getting enough football. The club player's not getting enough football. So I think it always be looked at. I've always said this, that it's an easy thing to sort out. But the powers that be, in my opinion, don't want to sort it out because of one reason: money.
Yeah.
And that's what I put it down to.
And I suppose just interesting as well, back at that international rules series now, and without getting into a debate about whether we should or shouldn't have it, but having to mention to a well-known GA personality who'd be involved in the communications department in Croke Park. Why is this happening here? It was the weekend, Glenswilly had their county final. Why has Michael Murphy been put into this position now? Michael was able to play the 2 games, but there's not every player could do that. But why is, as Peter McGinnity called him last week, the best player of his generation? That's no way to treat him. But the answer simply was, without this international rules, the national media wouldn't have 2 pages of Gaelic games every day, and that's no way of looking at it.
And agree with you completely. But the point I'm saying about it, I think next year we go forward to next year. And we'll just say Glenswilly, hopefully are doing well next year. And we'll just say and Donegal do well. Just see Donegal to the Ireland final next year. So that's the third Sunday in September. Yeah. So next thing, what happens after that? The team heads away to Australia for 3 weeks. So when are we going to play club football?
Yeah,
Christmas Day. I mean, are they thinking of this here? What happens? Because no club team's going to play without their county players play a championship here. So we'll just taking Donegal or Michael Murphy, if Glenswilly are doing well, they're not going to play without him. See, we'll probably have no games played in it because there are no games left the championship. So after Kilcar are beaten, we'll just say, or after, Donegal are beaten next year. Yeah. So if Donegal are beaten or get to the All-Ireland final and won it next year, they're 3 weeks in after that they go to Australia, I take it. So there'll be no club championship played in Donegal basically till you're talking about close to the 1st of November.
Yeah. I suppose, you look even last week, that Clare team, Cratloe. Yeah. They won their championship on the Saturday. It was their first time ever winning it. There was no celebration. There couldn't be because they were out in the Munster Championship 24 hours later. There's something inherently wrong with an association that allows that to happen with 8 players that give the GAA 2 of its biggest days this year. Those 8 Clare hurlers that were back playing for their clubs and back as we're, harping on about.
It was interesting, though, Chris, nobody has said anything.
No,
nobody. The GPA, nobody has come out and said anything on this whole thing.
It would look as if 12 months isn't enough, really. A year with 12 months isn't enough for either GAA or soccer, if we look at it this way. Because just going back to where we started with Ulster Senior League, one of the gripes that we're getting from there is once the league was over, it's slightly different to what Martin's saying. The players were all away to the Donegal League. And now you have 3 teams playing an Intermediate Cup next week and obviously playing with weaker squads than they should have if their league was going at this time of the year.
I suppose, we talked about the rugby and to tie it in as well. One thing that the rugby happens, they've got their designated weekends, and from January when you're going to be playing your games. It's the one thing actually the local soccer does particularly well. Yeah. And as you know, Charlie, 2:00 on a Sunday, unless there is something absolutely disastrously wrong, you will not get a game called off. No. And it doesn't matter if Johnny's in Cork at college or if Johnny has gone to Australia for the weekend. Yeah. The game he's playing.
That's something you've said to me in the past,
I've
Martin.
always said that in the past, and I give a lot of credit for the people running soccer in the county. That's one I played with St. Catherine's and Killybegs, and the one thing, there were no game called off for anything. Like the GAA, was always the GAA, there were somewhere there were always something called off. But the one thing about soccer, there were never a game called off, and you knew where you stood, and you could get the fixture at the start of the year, and people could plan. And I have to say, fair play them. I'd like to see the GAA being the same way.
Yeah. I suppose maybe it's a debate for another day, but you look at the Ulster Championship, the Ulster Senior Championship, there's only 9 teams in it, and it takes us 3 months to run it off. And then what's happening, you see, there's so much pressure on players and managers, they won't release them during that 3-month period. But you look at Glenswilly and stuff, and their run to the Ulster final, it's been pretty condensed. You have 2 weeks between every game. The 4 quarter-finals are on the one weekend, 2 semi-finals on the one weekend, and then you have the final. So 3 weekends to play the same number of games as the Ulster title. 4 weekends as opposed to taking in the preliminary round, but for the same length of a competition.
We'll just finish on this, Martin. I mean, we're not going to get the provincials, particularly the Ulster Council, are not going to change because the Ulster Championship is sacrosanct to them, basically. But Chris is making a good point. They could be doubling up. You could have the preliminary round game, and then you could have 2 quarter-finals the next weekend, 2 quarter-finals the next weekend, and you could have a semi-final, final. Condense it into even 5 weeks rather than this big stretch that we have.
Yeah, I suppose it's down to live TV and everything else and everything involved in it, with the way it is. I suppose it's down to money and then to like everything else. But I think that, I agree with you, they could play a game on a Saturday evening and play another one on the Sunday. There's no problem. One end of Ulster and play the other one the other end of Ulster, and people get to see the games and everything else. But I just think that, yes, a lot can be done, but I think the clubs have to stand up first of all, in my opinion, and be counted, and then Croke Park make a decision. Everybody's talking round this whole thing. I mean, even taking the Australian rule thing, I mean, we know it's run its course, it's over, but that's taking away 3 more Sundays or weekends away from it. It's just everything about it, but maybe it'll change. But I just hope from Gaelic football point of view and club football point of view, that it's not too late. I just hope that I have always said about the the goose laying the golden egg.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's too late, because listen, they have definitely neglected club football, totally and utterly neglected club football, and that's been from a way back. I remember time we were playing, I was playing, like you played the county, you were beaten probably in the first round, and then you played your club football, and that's the way it was. You're beaten whatever it was. The back door has changed the whole thing of club football being played during the summer.
Yeah. Chris, just finished the Ulster Senior League. Are they going to make that decision to start a bit earlier and finish a bit earlier? Is that the way it's going to go, do you think?
Yeah, it looks like it now. The suggestion on Wednesday night was that they're going to maybe run a February to September season, and that is to align themselves with transfer windows. Now, there is a suggestion it may not start as early as February, but just to maybe run through it very quickly, if a player wants to come from the Donegal League to Ulster Senior League, he has to move in the month of January. His next window is in June. At the moment, the Ulster Senior League, the league season starts maybe around mid-April, so he's got that break, whereas now he's going to be forced. Does he move to the Ulster Senior League for the start of the season, or does he wait till midway through it?
Okay, well, that's a better system. Glenswilly, Ballinderry then, Martin. Incredible Glenswilly in a senior title. I mean, even your very good Kilcar team when you were winning championships. And I was looking at some stats. St Eunan's 9 times tried it in the Ulster Club Championship and never got to the final. That Good Rua team 5 times never got to an Ulster Club final. I mean, it's an incredible achievement by Glenswilly to get to this final.
Yeah, it is, and by a small club as well, but I think, Logan, I mean, I was just thinking about the whole thing. I mean, we had since 2010 Niamh Conall won the Ulster Club final, and since that it's been a roller coaster for Donegal GA. We've had a fabulous 3 years from that time. They were an Ulster club, but I'm very unlucky that day. The game was called off. It was very hard to prepare for it and everything. They showed that so then 2011 was it? We won under 20. We won Ulster under 21. We got to All Ireland final. Isn't that right? Was that 2011?
Yeah.
And then
got to the All Ireland semi-final.
Got to 2011 All Ireland semi-final. 2010 actually. Sorry, of the dates. That year 2010 we got to the under 21 All Ireland as well. I think it was some dates mixed up with the years and everything else. They're going that fast. But I think, and then we won the Ulster. Then 2012 to win the Ulster, won the All Ireland, and then even taken last year we were in the Ulster under 21 final. We were the senior final, and now we've a club, Glenswilly, on the Ulster Club final. I mean, it's been a great 3 years, and fair play. Listen, for a small club like Glenswilly, it's an unbelievable achievement to get to the final. And listen, you might only get one chance in your lifetime to do this, and they've got that chance. And the players of the quality of the players, some the bigger players don't come along very often in a club. You could have a 20-30 year cycle. Them things can happen. So they've got them there, and it's a great chance for them. And I mean, the way they've organised, the way the whole thing done, and the backroom team and everything about them, they're been run like an inter-county team, club team, and that's the one. And they're all in behind it, and the senior players are right behind it. And the great thing about the whole thing, even chatting, meeting some of the other players, they're no way jealous of the senior players that they've achieved, and that's a big thing. They're all in this together, and that's a great sign of an area, great sign of a community, and it'd be great. Listen, it'd be a great lift for Donegal football if we could win an Ulster club. It's one thing we have never won. I mean, I know St Joseph's, unofficially I think it's 75, an unofficial one, but to win an official one, and for a small club like Glenswilly to lead, for them, and listen, they've been there, they've been on what they've achieved as a club has been unreal. And it'll be tough on the day. Like Ballinderry have allowed Spain, they've won 3 dairy championships in a row. It's going to be tough on the day, but listen, as I suppose everybody says, who's going to mark Michael Murphy? So that's what they're all saying about Derry, and that's the thing they'll be saying. Who's going to mark him? The way the player he is. You need a different type of player to mark him. So, and with Neil Gallagher going well, you have Gary McFadden going well. You have the players, the big players, Kieran Boner. You have all their big players are going well, and then the other players are fitting in right beside it, fitting in really well to them. So look at it's. They're right, they're ready, and they'll not fear anybody, and that's a good thing. It's going to be a great. The Donegal Dairy final's great.
I'm going to ask you a tricky one before I come to Chris here. We commentated on their intermediate championship victory over Cloughaneedy, 2005 or 6 was it?
2005.
2005. How many of that team will be starting on Sunday week?
I wouldn't have a clue. I don't know.
Well, the only possible starters from that day are going to be John McFadden, Neil Gallagher, Kieran Boner, Colin Kelly back again, Gary McFadden and Darren McGinley. And Darren started that day because I think Sean Boner was injured. So there's only six of that starting lineup playing now. You had the Malloys, and you had the likes of Sean Burke and Barry Canning and Michael Canning and Charlie Boner and Daniel Gallagher. Big Jared McGranra still involved, of course, in the panel as well. And the changeover.
Yeah,
I mean, Gary McFadden was a very young lad. Darren McGinley was very young. Colin, you praised Colin Kelly that day extensively because I think it's the first time you really got a good look at him, you know. And then they were in a senior final after that, and then they won a senior final. So, Chris, it's been relatively quick progress, but if you look at the way they've moved since they won in that intermediate championship, it's been very good progress.
It's been absolutely remarkable, and I suppose you can kind of be seen to maybe nearly patronise Glenswilly, you know, when you start talking about this, but it really, really is remarkable. Like, I was out there at the press night out there last night and chatting to the likes of John Braca and Brian McDade. They won a Division 3, I think it was, minor title way back in the mid-90s. Glenswilly, those boys were playing at Division 4, the bottom rung of Donegal football, and at the bottom of it at that stage. And now for the likes of Braca and Shorty to be going into playing an Ulster final, I don't know would there be any player anywhere who has done that, who has actually climbed the ladder. You know, you see clubs climbing the ladder, but to do it in that short, condensed space of time and still have survivors. And you mentioned Big Jared McGranner as well. Like their story's amazing, and to me, Glenswilly at the moment, they're the ultimate embodiment of what we say about the GA, that pride in the parish thing. I mean, Jesus, you go out there, Charlie, and every last person in the parish seems to have, however small the role is, but they have a job, and they just do it to absolute perfection.
Do they reflect the likes of your own club, Martin, where the numbers are small?
Yeah, it's the same thing, but sometimes a small club, you see everybody plays Gaelic football or involved in Gaelic football. You know, I was up in the hospital yesterday actually in Letterkenny here, and there was a lady in it that had a guest house, Irene McGinley.
Yeah.
And I've no wild interest in football, but that's all she talked about when I was in the room in the ward. There's John about football. There's another nurse up there, a very good lady from Glenswilly, on about Glenswilly. Everybody chatting about Glenswilly. So listen, there's a lot of pride in them. What you like about them is they're no wee big head or anything else. They're just going about their business and doing it, and they know what they're about, and that's what you have to say. And you know, when you meet them, they're very modest. People know they are, but they know what they do. When they cross that line, they know what they would do. So it's a fabulous achievement for a small club to do it. You know, people say about the G. I mean, we look at what you're doing with Ballinderry, a big club. Yeah. Crossmaglen, a big club. Kilcoo would be a massive club area. All these other clubs. It's all at the minute the way the G is going. It's about this elitist club. You know, you're talking about Crokes down in Kerry, and I was down there at a wedding recently, and they're on about starting to poach players from other clubs to try to get over the line, you know. These big clubs are becoming massive, you know. Like you take St. Bridges and Roscommon, a town team, big club. Castlebar, big club. This is where Glenswilly are different, hey. They're a really country. This is a real small. If you drove past it, you might drive through and you wouldn't know you've been. That's right. And that's what the G is about. That's what the G is built on, the parish rule, and built on that there and there. And that's why it's great having them, because they keep. That's what the association is about. And you know, that's where totally not every player wanting to play football, and every player wanting to do a job. And they're pretty much what the J is totally and utterly about, and it's great to see it, and other clubs can look at it in this county. Smaller clubs can say in this county, look, we don't have to be playing in Division 4, we can get there. Let's get the whole thing right, get our organisation commitment right and everything. And look at they've got a couple of very good players coming along. Like, you see, and Michael Murphy doesn't come along every day, and when you have him, you've got to make the most of him, because every team that's ever won in Gaelic football, they had one outstanding forward, and Kelly as well, Colin Kelly, like that takes a bit of pressure off, you see, because a lot of teams just Murphy. What will Ballinderry be planning for? Murphy. If they don't plan for Kerry and Copper McFadden or Kelly, them boys, that's the difference. That's when it makes the difference. And Murphy's that good a player that when he sees that, he knows how to play it. And that's it. Everything doesn't have to go through him. He's happy enough to be there and do his job and do that there. So I think it's. And you know, Big Neil has been, you know, I mean, it's fabulous. You know, fabulous for the club. What the club. But when you see the county players leading as being club men like they are, and what they've achieved, All-Stars, All-Irelands, and these men are still, the club is the most important thing for them. That's great to see that.
Can they beat Ballinderry, Chris?
Of course they can. And I have no qualms about saying that. Of course they can. You look through their team sheet, like, you know, taking away Murphy and Big Neil, 2 All-Stars from last year, of course they can. Kieran Boner on his day is as good a footballer as is in Donegal. You know, he's got the package, he's got the power, he's got the pace, can take a score, can put in the hits. He's got the package. Colin Kelly is probably, again, on his day, this famous phrase, on his day, but he's a really, really exciting live wire forward. And I was chatting to Francie Martin just about, you know, about the whole thing this week, and he was saying, like, the first night Colin Kelly went up to Donegal training. He had never worn a Donegal jersey before, and McIver was doing, ironically, a Ballinderry man, McIver, was doing the fitness test. Colin Kelly won the fitness test. He's just got that wee sort of yard of pace ahead of everybody else. But you look down through then, I suppose, the so-called lesser players.
Yeah.
Your Joe Gibbonses, James Pat McDade. Look at Big Eamon Ward, like a couple of Monaghan club titles he has with Clontarrett, like been a fantastic addition to them.
And Darren McGinley and Keelan McFadden have come of age this season really as well, haven't they?
They have, Charlie, and they give them a new dimension, that ball carrying with pace and with serious pace. Like there was a couple of their scores, a couple of goals last week came off Savvy and Darren McGinley, and like when those Glenswilly boys crossed the white line, like we saw it, I noticed particularly last Sunday with Joe Gibbons, them boys will put their body on the line to win for Glenswilly, and that has to count for something. So of course they can, and like Martin was saying, those guys, they're no way jealous of Murphy and Neil, but there is a reason for that. Is because like Mick Murphy tells the story of 2011. Donegal had lost the All-Ireland semi-final on the Sunday. Glenswilly then were trying to refocus. On the Tuesday night, 48 hours after it, they were going to training, and he tells the story himself and Brendan Walsh were setting up cones, and out of the corner of his eye, 20 minutes before anybody else was due to land, here were the two boys coming. It was setting a message.
Yeah, we're back.
We've parked the county. Yeah. Here we are. Let's do this. Yeah. And from that night, they went on to win their first Dr. Maguire. I
mean, Ballinderry, let's not underestimate them, Martin. They've come through, they beat Clonoe, it was tough. Scottstown and Clonus going to be tough. I suppose they got Kilcoo a wee bit shaken after the two big matches with Crossmaglen, but nonetheless, they were favourites in many people's eyes to win Ulster. So Ballinderry are a serious proposition.
They are. There's no question. I mean, the experience that they have as well in Ulster, and they've won. Their plans this year was to win the Ulster. They wouldn't have been planning. Look, at third, 3 in Derry was, we have to get out of Derry here, which is not an easy county to get out of. No. But they're figuring out, they were looking at the bigger picture. That's the way they would feel themselves, the way they are. Because Enda Muldoon and Kevin McGuckin, these players are getting older and they're saying, look, this is our best chance to do it, Just interesting, going back to Glenswilly a minute, I'm just thinking of the game that Keelan Kelly had the last day, the amount of ball he cut out and done the simple things right. When you talked about Joe Gibbons, playing, he's playing everywhere on the field. He could wear number 11, he could be anywhere. And this performance the last day, them players, that makes the difference. It's not the big players, even though them was on the big players. But going on to Ballinderry, it's supposed to Kevin McGuckin thing is going to be a big one. It's going to be a very big one. Kevin McGuckin. Gareth McKinless, the centre back, the manager's son, will probably maybe go to full back, I would think, to pick up Michael Murphy. He's wearing number 6, but he goes into the full back line. Now he does the marking job now. Willie, he did it the last day, on Conor Lafferty. Conor Lafferty's a small player, Murphy's a different type of player. Michael Murphy do that there. James Connolly, Kevin McGuckin in the middle of the field, probably will get Kevin McGuckin off, though what I'm hearing, it was a harsh sending off. It was the linesman actually sent him off, so I'd say they probably will get him off. That looks that way, that the way it'll go. So listen, they have Michael Conlon next row. They have a lot of ex-players, and both Ryan Bell, the famous player, remember the under-21 game this year, Donegal, he hit the crossbar the last shot. They have players, Conlon Devlin, Conlon Gilligan, who'll know all about Donegal football, would have been involved with Glenties. Fair bit came down to Niamh Connell. He'll know a fair bit about Donegal and about Glenswilly probably, because they probably played them at him. And we talk about Big Enda Muldoon able to come off the bench. So listen, it's going to be tough. And you have Michael McIver, even though we're number 4s, isn't there? And the two number 4s, the last year, Keelan McFadden and Michael McIver, both of them played in the forward line, both of them were number 4 for the two teams. So look, it's going to be a tough game. It's a 50-50 game. But suppose the question you ask, can Glenswilly win it? Yes. And we really believe they can win it. Niamh Connell, in 2010, we're up against that Crossmaglen team. We're just there winning All Irelands. This is a wee bit different. Where Ballinderry they're an experience, and Donegal have a good record against Derry, even inter county level. Good record against Derry. Don't fear Derry. So listen, they have a great chance of winning it, but they're going to have to play at a high level, and it's going to be you're up against a team that have big tradition in Ulster football and big tradition in Derry, and they'll be looking at the bigger picture, Ballinderry.
And I suppose the thing about Glenswilly this year is they have been in a battle every time they've gone on to a championship field. Like they were in that so-called group of death, and I remember going down to watch them at the bridge the last night. They were playing St Michael's. They went down without Neil Gallagher.
That's right, I was there.
Kilcar had beaten them the first day, and they were pretty much then with the group the way it was. They were in must-win territory. So they beat a Bundoran team, remember, that had shocked St Michael's the week before, so were a dangerous opponent. They went then down to the bridge without Big Neil, and with about 10 minutes to go, Daniel McLaughlin broke away in the middle of the field and got the legs opened and was away, clear on goal, or so we thought. And in comes Brian McDade with a tackle.
I remember it.
That robbed him of the ball. A goal there, and Glenswilly were out of the championship. But that to me was probably the moment of the championship for Glenswilly, because they kind of kicked on from that. But I suppose they've been in that battle, like even last Sunday in the semi-final, they conceded the 2 quick-fire goals, and better teams would probably have buckled or could have buckled, but Glenswilly didn't panic. They got the next 3 scores and won the game. the big thing about them, they know how to win a game and they know how to win a battle as well.
So we all think they're going to win?
Yeah, listen, I didn't see Ballinderry, but it's going to be tough. But I just think, they have the ability to win, they have the players to win, and they have the know-how to win. And they'll not fear anybody, and they'll not be nervous up. They'll not be into a game. They'll be going into this game believing they're going to win. They'll not be going into the game hoping they're going to win, and that's the difference. Probably teams in the past from Donegal were hoping they were going to win. Now these boys have the mentality that they believe they're going to win. Even listening to my own two boys chatting about Michael Murphy and Neil Gallagher's leaders, they're fabulous leaders. As inter-county leaders, and Murphy sometimes maybe at inter-county level puts a lot of pressure on himself as leader, but he's able to carry that. They're just saying, even Ryan, who's gone into the panel there, just passing a comment about Murphy, how great a leader he is and the dressing room and on the field. That's what they're about, and that's why. Not because of them, but just the whole setup. And I have to give Gary McDade a lot of credit for what he's achieved, what he's done. I mean, it's an unbelievable achievement what he's achieved. Won 2 championships. First of all, a team that's never won a championship in 3 years and now has them in an Ulster club final. And look, at going into it as, even Stephen. Donegal teams normally don't go in as even Stevens.
Yeah. And I suppose actually to take them again this year from where I did, because remember last year they were relegated from Division 1.
Yeah, they had a downer last year.
Went out of the championship without a whimper. There was a lot of their players had gone away travelling and stuff. So he had to come in and
he put it up to them. He put it up to them in January.
Might be no harm that there though when you look back. It's like Dublin.
Yeah,
they got the wee break year out. Sometimes it gives you the hunger back. If you try to keep it up at that pace the second year, now it's hard. People like to do back to backs, but if you do keep it at that level the second year, if you don't do it, then you're nearly gone. Yeah. It's very hard to come back to second. But if you have an easy enough year the second year, whatever happened, at least the hunger back there, and you have that. Look, we're giving it another go. And I think I heard somebody saying what you said, Charlie. I think down there was you when you were down the night of the cutback. You said good teams won 1, but great teams won 2, and they used that I think at the start of the year. So that yes,
I haven't been paid for that.
They have to go down as being, when you won the second one, they have to go down as being a good team, as being a great team now.
Okay, we got to leave it, lads. Chris McNulty, Martin McHugh, thanks for coming in. That's it from Talking Sport for this week. Thanks to Tommy and Timmy here at Full Tilt Studios for looking after us, and we'll be back with more next week.